So, hello, my name is Adelina Comas-Herrera, and I'm really delighted to welcome you to the first webinar of an interest group from the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care on community-based dementia care. And I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of what's the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care, so you have a bit of context. So the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care is a platform for cross-national learning to improve and strengthen care systems. It's part of the International Long-Term Care Policy Network. And the idea is that we have shared challenges across the world, and we want to showcase how different countries and localities are addressing them through research evidence and facilitating collaborations. And this is open to everyone, policymakers, industry advocates, care professionals, and academics. So the way the observatory works is that basically it's powered by people's willingness to share their work. And this is through sharing your publications with us. We have some specific publications from the observatory. We have now 15 long-term care system profiles for different countries. We have blogs, methods, and topics guides. And the main way really is through the interest groups like today. And each interest group organizes webinars, brings together people with similar interests, and the interest groups themselves can share publications and resources that they find useful. We also are gradually building up a database covering experts, and we list you by country, topics and methods, publications on long-term care, that as soon as we find publications that are relevant, we keep adding them. We've got almost 500 publications now. We have a database of research projects, so that's also a good way of sharing your projects. And after the webinars, we also share the videos. We have quite a few webinars coming up. We have one on new and old ethical issues on technology and long-term care on the 24th of April. We have one on care workforce, looking at which factors are critical and how they change with worker age on the 30th of April. On the 8th of May, we're looking at living care migration, comparing the politics of it through Taiwan, Austria, and Germany. 14th of May, we're going to look at a very different topic, but we're very also thrilled to be looking at it because it's so important, which is global initiatives on continence care in long-term care. And on the 27th of May, from the course experimental methods interest groups, we've got a webinar on estimating the cost of informal care with a novel two-stage approach to individual synthetic control. Now, if you're here and you're not yet a member of the observatory, this is what you need. This is the link to join us. And with this, I'm going to stop and hand over to Walt, who's going to introduce the interest group on community-based dementia care. All yours, Walt.
Great. Thank you, Adelina. Appreciate it. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us. I'm Walt Dawson. I'm the co-convener of the Community-Based Approaches to Dementia Care Interest Group, along with Adelina. We have a fantastic panel of speakers today, and this, by the way, is I believe, our interest group's first webinar. Our interest group plans to hold more webinars over the months ahead, but please stay tuned for more details on the specific focus of those webinars and dates of those webinars. But before our speakers begin today, I just wanted to provide kind of a quick overview of the community-based approaches to dementia care interest group. And our interest group really has a specific focus on understanding policy approaches to better support people who are living with dementia, as well as dementia care partners outside of kind of licensed long-term care settings. In other words, we're really focused on policies and programs that can support people who may be living in their own homes or in the community. The research and policy interests of this group also include paid care and supports provided such as in-home care services, respite care, and other kind of community-based approaches and options that are used to support people living with dementia. And our group really intends to draw together a group of multinational, multidisciplinary researchers, as well as practitioners who have an interest in dementia care and supports. and also should say that we both qualitative and mixed method research approaches are strongly encouraged. So I would just say with that, please join our group. There are certainly opportunities for collaborations. There are opportunities to plan webinars that, to explore different topics related to community-based care and dementia. But I think we're really kind of still developing what this group can do, and I really hope to see it kind of grow and flourish. So besides the link on the website to join a specific interest group, including this one, please feel free to contact me directly, and I would be very happy to brainstorm ideas. I've included my email here on the slide, in case anyone does want to reach out.
Walt, we
Thank you
haven't
again.
Well, we haven't actually
Oh,
managed to see the slides. Not
oh
entirely sure
no.
what Zoom's playing up with today, but please do put if you're okay to put your email on the chat so that everyone can have it. And Naz has shared a link to the page of the interest group
Yes.
as well. So for everyone, please do look at the chat.
So sorry
Thank you.
about that. Yeah,
Don't
you never
worry.
know technology. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to you, Adelina.
Yeah, and to Walt's credit, the slides did work when we had the rehearsal just before. So this is the kind of thing that happens in live webinars. Now, Rosemary will make sure we have your slides and we can see them properly when you get started.
Okay, so I was asked to thank you for inviting me and to tell you something about the Meeting Center Support Program, especially the development, evaluation, and dissemination. I'm working at the Department of Psychiatry, but I'm an emeritus professor, so I'm in pension. But I worked for quite a long time, about more than 40 years, I think, at VU University Medical Center, and the last 30 years at the Department of Psychiatry, where we developed the Meeting Center Support Program. Okay, so we started thinking about supporting people with dementia and carers, especially in the first place the informal carers, in the 90s, beginning of the 90s. And based on that, we did a needs study. And well, this really was the first study, let's say, we did, and from which we developed a program, Meeting Center Support Program, which started from supporting the informal carers. But we thought we cannot support the informal carers if we don't know the people with dementia themselves. So very quickly, we thought about a combined program. And that was the Meeting Center Support Program. We started developing it together with people with dementia. In 93, the first 2 meeting centers opened in Amsterdam. And then we did some effect evaluation study in 94. And then we thought, okay, we publish it and then it will, well, disseminate in the country, but it didn't. There were a few new centers which were opened. But then in 2000, we got the opportunity to do an implementation study. So we did this implementation study and we repeated the effect study. And after that, as it was again successful and we saw the evidence, the effectiveness, we set up a help desk in 2004. And then the dissemination really started. And now there are about 200 meeting centers in the Netherlands. And in 2014, we did a European implementation study in the UK, Poland, and Italy. And well, that was the start of the European dissemination. There are now about 100 meeting centers outside the Netherlands, in the UK, in Poland, and in Italy, and in Spain. But also after 2018, when we set up the Meeting Them network, there was dissemination outside Europe. So now there are also meeting centers in 6 other countries, in Singapore, in Aruba, in Suriname, and also in Japan, Australia. So now there are about 6 countries, and also in Africa, because We're going to hear about that today, of course. So yes, there are now several countries outside Europe who also provide meeting centers for people with dementia. So it was a very long journey, about 35 years we had. So what is the meeting center support program? Well, it's not very complex. It's a program for the persons with dementia, day club with psychomotor group therapy, creative and recreational activities, emotion-oriented care methods are used. And for the carers, there are informative meetings, support groups, and care coordination. So the informative meetings are about key subjects, let's say, which are important for the carers, about the diagnosis, but also changes in behavior, and what to do if you want to care for your partner or whatever, and you want to continue that for doing several years, you know. So how do you deal with that? And then for both, there is a consulting hour, so an individual consulting hour. There are monthly meetings between the personnel and the people with dementia and carers to really have a conversation. How do you like the program? Do you want something different? Do we have plans for outings or whatever? And there are social activities. And what's very special, I think, of the meeting centers is that it's a combined support program. Normally we have in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, day clubs for people with dementia, but well, separate support for carers. That it is person-centered. That's also special. Normally the daycares, at least in the Netherlands, are quite standard. We have individualized programs, and that it is socially integrated in the neighborhood. So it's community-based. In the Netherlands, normally the daycares, at least when we started in the 90s, were only in nursing homes. So that was already much more difficult to access for people, because yeah, then you have the feeling I'm going to a nursing home, you know, so that's really the end station. So I think, yeah, it's not a complex program, but it is, yeah, it's nice that it's combined, that it is socially integrated, and that it is individualized. Then the whole program has a firm theoretical basis. So the adaptation coping model is the basis for the whole support strategy you use. And what does it mean? Well, you look at different areas of adaptation to see in what areas people are doing well or having problems and how you can support them. So this is about cognitive adaptation, emotional adaptation, and social adaptation. For the cognitive adaptation, you think about how does the person deal with his disabilities, or is he able to develop an adequate relationship with his carers, informal and formal carers. Then for emotional adaptation, think about, is the person able to preserve an emotional balance and a positive self-image? And how does he deal with an uncertain future? And then social adaptation, we think of how the person is able to keep in contact with family and friends and to deal with an environment as the meeting centers. So based on that, so that's, let's say in the first month, people, well, the personnel is observing the person and having contact with the person to see what goes well and where are problems experienced. And based on that, a psychosocial diagnosis is made. And so that's really the start for choosing the support strategies. So when there are problems with the cognitive adaptation, the main support strategy is activation, letting people, giving people the opportunity to function according to their abilities. Then when there are emotional problems, then of course the main support strategy is improving emotional functioning by providing all kinds of activities where people can feel success, can be happy, etc. And for the social adaptation, the support strategies are of course socialization, doing all kinds of activities in pairs or in groups, or so that people can have contact and socialize. We've done quite a lot of research, and there is evidence in the Netherlands that the meeting centers, compared to regular daycare, cause people with dementia to have less behavioral and mood problems, less inactivity and unsocial behavior, less depressed behavior, higher self-esteem. There is a delay of admission to a nursing home, and you can see that it is resulting from several studies. In the first study, we had 4 meeting centers, and in the second one, 8 meeting centers. And the carers, we saw that carers had more feelings of competence, so feeling able to provide the care, less feelings of burden, and less psychosomatic complaints, especially lonely carers. And also in the Meeting Them project, where we also did this effect evaluation, we saw that people that the program was beneficial for quality of life, that it was implementable. Down in quality of life, people felt were more feelings of belonging and higher self-esteem, positive effect. The carers felt less burden, felt better supported. And in Italy, where we had more meeting centers who participated in the Meeting Them project, people also had a better mental health and less behavior and mood symptoms. We also did implementation studies, and based on that, we saw that there were several facilitators of implementing the meeting centers, and one very strong facilitator is the added value of the small-scale meeting center support program model. So the combined, intensive, flexible support for people with dementia and the carer, easy access community centers close to home, social integration with other residents, and a small permanent professional staff, which causes earlier participation, a trusting relationship, easier to accept help, and sharing the care. And of course, the positive effects are also helpful when you want to implement a new program. A second strong facilitator is the collaboration in the neighborhood. The meeting centers are based on a collaborative network. It starts with an initiative group, and in this initiative group, social support organizations, care providers, welfare organizations, and volunteer organizations are invited. They together stepwise prepare the meeting center, make an implementation plan, a collaboration agreement, and it is by these collaborations, it is integrated in the local support offer. So that's a very strong point of the meeting centers. And then the third strong facilitator is that it is cost effective. And this is, of course, very interesting for policymakers, the local government, but also for health insurers. And other facilitators, of course, are that there is enthusiastic and motivated personnel, insights in the needs in the specific regions before setting up the meeting center, the clear care vision and method, working from the adaptation coping model, as I explained, easy accessible location in the neighborhood with possibilities for social integration. Normally we have community centers, but there are also locations close to the church, for instance. Then the flexibility of the program, depending on the participants' needs and wishes, because the participants, they, of course, change, new participants come in, other persons going out. So you really have to adapt the program all the time to the people who are participating in it. Then the continuous PR, public relations, it's very important, of course. People need to know that you're there in the neighborhood, and obtaining structural financial support. But there are also barriers of implementation. For instance, when organizations are unaware, not recognizing, neglecting, or not appreciating the added value of the meeting center support program, are not innovation-minded, are not directed at regional collaboration, but at competition. when they see the meeting centres as a threat for their own daycare, or are only directed at people with dementia and not the informal carers, while the meeting centres are, of course, a combined program, or when they do not acquire starting or structural funding. And more specific barriers during implementation are difficulties reaching and recruiting the target group. Waiting lists for more intensive care, causing waiting lists for starters in the meeting center. And this means that the level of dementia, the severity level of dementia becomes worse in your group, while you also want to attract people with mild dementia. Laws and financial regulations can, of course, influence the whole implementation. And then absence of national policies on dementia care. For instance, in Poland, this is still absent. They are working on it, and also in the UK. Because of the successful program, we from the Netherlands, we thought it was important to try to disseminate and implement this meeting centers model in other countries. And we were then supported by the joint program Neurodegenerative Diseases, GPND, who supported a study, a dissemination study, and also with a repeated effect evaluation in it. And after that Meeting Them project, we set up this Meeting Them network to keep up the collaboration and to try to stimulate further dissemination. So here you see the Meeting Them network goals, the dissemination of meeting centers, knowledge exchange, exchange of experiences and views, and international collaboration in applied research to post-diagnostic interventions. So regarding dissemination, we think it's important to disseminate the knowledge of the meeting centers in congresses, lectures, international websites for different target groups, of course. So not only the people who are working with people with dementia, but also policymakers, general public, research community, health insurance companies. Regarding knowledge exchange, it's important that we disseminate the knowledge on how to start and continue meeting centers. So we made a pioneer course for that in different languages, in Spanish, in English, and Dutch. But also to exchange knowledge about effective post-diagnostic care in the different countries, because we can learn a lot from each other. We made a practical guide how to set up a meeting center. This is also in different languages, Dutch, English, Italian, Polish, Spanish. And for exchange of experiences, you can see some nice photos from different meeting centers in different countries. We have the Meeting Them newsletter. And if you're interested, you can, of course, sign up for this newsletter at www.meetingthem.eu. So to conclude, the Meeting Centres is a good example of proven effective, cost-effective support program that is transferable across countries, and the implementation strategies have been successful. And we can see that now from the growing network of interest in different countries where meeting centers are. And hopefully, yeah, this dissemination will go on in the coming years, so that in each continent, in each part of the world, people can really use this great program. So yeah, that was what I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. And now we're going to hear about the experience of implementing and evaluating and apologies for lack of camera, hopefully it's coming, yes, the meeting centers in the UK. So we're going to hear from Shirley and Thomas.
Thank you very much, and I think it's very good to follow on from Professor Dres, and very excellent to be here at this webinar with the Global Observatory. I'm very pleased and proud to be here, and thank you very much for inviting us. So we're going to be talking about our model of community-based support for people affected by dementia in the UK. So I'm Shirley Evans, and I'm Director of the Association for the Dementia Studies at the University of Worcester. Some of you will know that previously that was led by Professor Dawn Brooker, MBE. She retired as Director in 2022, but continues as an Emeritus Professor. So I've been leading the centre since 2022 and involved obviously with that, and also in my local community in Herefordshire in England in setting up community-based initiatives, including meeting centres and other facilities and support for people living with dementia. So at the university and the Association for Dementia Studies, our work includes education and practice development, postgraduate distance learning, PhD studentships, and we have expertise in person-centeredness, families, communities, arts, sport, nature, design, technology, complex care, from pre-diagnosis to end of life. So there's a history of meeting centres in the UK. So up between 2000 and 2013, Professor Brooker had become aware of the work from the Netherlands, and that was led by Professor Drers. And we're very interested in that. And we were delighted to be part of a project that was led by Professor Drers, and which we joined the international partners to conduct the Meeting Dem JP&D funded research. So that was about taking the learning from the Netherlands and implementing and evaluating meeting centres in the UK, Italy and Poland. And from that work, well, we set up 2 local pilot meeting centres in the UK, which have sustained after the research finished. So the first meeting centre was set up in Droitwich Spa in 2015, so has nearly been open for 10 years, and in Leominster just the following February there, so open for 9 years, which is really exciting. But there was much more to follow. And my colleague Thomas is going to be talking about this now. So I'd like to hand over to Thomas, and Thomas, I'll operate the slides for you.
Yes, so yeah, basically, obviously, yeah, as Shirley says, the Droitwich Spa and Leominster meeting centres were part of the Meeting Dem project to bring meeting centres to the UK and implement them here. They managed to sustain beyond the life of that research project, so that was brilliant, as and they're still going today. But very shortly after that, meeting centres did start to spread across the UK. So we had meeting centres shortly set up in Brecon in Wales. It was the first one in Wales, and in Kirriemuir in Scotland. So they became demonstrator sites essentially for meeting centres in the 3 nations of the UK. And from there on, what happened next essentially was we got some money from the big lottery fund, community fund, to see whether we could actually implement between 15 and 20 meeting centres across the UK as a whole. So we were essentially, at that point, we were seeing if we could spread the word about meeting centres, get people to take them up in different communities and so on. We were almost at 15. I think it was 14, but it was fewer than 15 anyway. And then, of course, the COVID pandemic hit, which was an absolute, it was a tragedy really, because we thought that, well, I mean, obviously for many reasons, but we thought that at that point, we thought, well, this may be the end of meeting centres in the UK, because of course meeting centres are about meeting up physically, and we had a year, maybe almost 2 years of various lockdown restrictions of meeting socially. Actually, the opposite happened, which was really interesting, because essentially what seemed to happen is people really understood during COVID the the benefits of meeting up physically. And it was something that became really important to people, that when the lockdowns lift, we will be able to actually meet, because I know there are various there's been various research out there that showed that people who were isolated in their own homes, both living with dementia and people who were caring for them, suffered some really bad effects from being isolated in that way. So when we actually came out of the pandemic, we found that there was an incredible amount of interest in meeting centres in the UK, and a very fast take up and growth of communities wanting to try this in their own areas. So, I mean, we say that there are now at least 70 to 80 and counting. Why? It's hard to be specific about it, really, because it is moving all the time. There's a constant, there's some setting up in some places. There are a few we have lost, but generally speaking, they have managed to sustain. So it's so it's pretty good. As I say, about 80. I think it's probably more than that, but that's that we know of, because of course, again, it's staying in touch with all of the places that have started up meeting centres to see how they're going. So yeah, anyway, so yes, next slide, please. So here is here's some of the research that we've done in the UK since, that's related to meeting centres and similar forms of support. Obviously, there is Meeting Dem. That is the study that Professor Droz was talking about, that spread meeting centres across European countries. The Meeting Centre Support Programme was what I just mentioned, which was the big lottery fund to try and spread meeting centres across the UK. We also did a literature review called SCIDEM. The SCI is Sustainable Community Interventions. That was looking not just at meeting centres, but other types of community-based support of all types, whether it's things like singing groups, walking groups, peer support groups, luncheon clubs, and so on. And that led to something called Get Real with Meeting Centres, which I'll talk about a bit more in a minute, which is basically looking at the sustainability of meeting centres in the UK by taking some case studies of meeting centres that had managed to sustain for more than 3 years at that point, and see what were they doing right, what were the challenges that remained, and so on. We have a couple of other things in there. Embed essentially was a little bit of work to again try to keep meeting centres embedding across the UK. We also had some money from the Shaw Foundation to fund a studentship, which has now a PhD studentship, which has now come to an end. Our colleague Dr. Nathan Stevens has done some work on the return on investment, social return on investment. So looking at the finances behind things, essentially. We also had the Worcestershire Meeting Centres Community Support Programme, looking at starting meeting centres across Worcestershire. And we're currently working on something called Food Glorious Food, which is not just in meeting centres, it's also in other places as well. But we're looking at the role of food in community-based support groups and how important that is to groups, and how groups do food, what the benefits and challenges are of that, and also looking at the cultural factors behind that as well, with groups that serve different people from different cultural backgrounds and so on. And finally there, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that are forthcoming, really, in yellow there. We've got hopefully forthcoming, as I say, there's something that a proposed project that we haven't actually got funding for yet, so we're hoping will go ahead, which is we're calling Show Me What You've Got, because it's basically about the data collection in meeting centres and similar types of community-based initiative, and how we might be able to improve or make more efficient or easier to do the data collection, day-to-day data collection, to evidence what they're doing. And we've also got a rather exciting project which will be setting up a meeting centre within a hospital, which sounds strange and possibly slightly different to what we know meeting centres as, but we'll explain more about that in a minute. That's something I'll talk about in a second. So yes. Right, I don't want to spend too much time on this, because I know I say we need to rattle on, but it's essentially I wanted to just say a few words about the Get Real with Meeting Centres project. Now, this was the piece of work that we did, which was something called a realist evaluation. So essentially what we were trying to do with that was to understand we looked at 4 different case studies of meeting centres in the UK that all operated in slightly different ways, because of course we should say meeting centres are all independent really, that they run, they're the community based and they're run by that community for that community. So they tend to actually end up looking slightly different in the way that they actually run things and so on. So this project really was to look at exactly how meeting centres had managed to sustain, what was important in the sustaining of them in the UK, and particularly what what challenges there might be. And things that we found here, so yes, we found that referrals to meeting centres and the dementia care pathway was, well, it was essential to have those strong links with health and social care services. Of course, that is, in the first place, meeting centres should be working across health and social care services as partners in creating the meeting centre, but that can sometimes be easier said than done. And I think it's fair to say there are some systemic issues in the UK to do with communication between your primary health, secondary health, social care, third sector groups, and so on, and how well those different organizations and bodies communicate with each other and understand what each other is doing and work together and so on. So we found that good communication both between the health and social care services and the meeting centre, but also within the health and social care services themselves, was essential to understanding what a meeting centre is and actually making appropriate referrals at the right time and so on. So again, but that also includes, of course, issues with diagnosis as well, in that sometimes diagnosis rates are not as good as they should be, and that people are getting diagnosed quite late, and that may mean that they're not no longer appropriate to go to a meeting centre that to serve their needs, which is because meeting centres are, of course, geared towards people with mild to moderate dementia. So there was some issues with the dementia pathways in various places. We found reaching people and meeting centre membership, there needed to be clarity of what exactly was on offer. Sometimes there was some misunderstanding as to exactly what a meeting centre was supposed to be, and I think this was alluded to by Professor Droz earlier on. With people maybe not understanding that it isn't daycare, it's not a respite service, and it is there for family members as well as people living with dementia. Sometimes people might look at a meeting centre and just immediately presume it's something that when they go along they see that it isn't that and it's something different. So and we found that there was something it's a little sometimes mission drift, we called it, in how meeting centres ran, because there were various pressures from outside of a meeting centre, but also maybe from inside a meeting centre, to serve a more advanced membership profile than was originally intended. And that could be an issue, because it's an issue for the integrity of what meeting centres are as a distinct targeted intervention. So that we found that sometimes there would be pressure to take people at a meeting centre who really, the meeting centre is designed to serve people at a certain part of the pathway, not a later part of the pathway. So again, external relationships and collaboration is absolutely essential. We found that there was real strength in organisations who worked at a very local community level, working with an organisation as a community level who could bring different things to the table, had different strengths and so on. Yes, we found that absolutely competition is really unhelpful in this area, because there are limited funds. There's and really the meeting centres should be about everybody pulling together and working together, rather than setting up these kind of things saying, well, I'm doing this, or and I don't want to I'm getting funding for doing this and I don't want the funding to go to someone else, so I'm not going to work with them. That kind of thing could be really bad for trying to get anything going in an area, and it's just really unhelpful. So we found that where meeting centres work together with all the various organisations in the area, that was optimum. I've already talked about mission drift there, so as I say, I think I'll skip over that, but that was something that we found. Finances and funding, again, we found, well, ultimately stable ongoing funding of some sort is needed for stable ongoing community dementia support. I mean, it's no surprise there really, but there's no getting away from that. And what would help really is more formal recognition of social model community-based initiatives, rather than a very medical focus as such, from statutory bodies. And of course, data collection will help that. So we're aware that data collection is one of the things that we want to look at the next, of, you know, kind of improving the kind of flow of that data, essentially. Yes, and that's just some of the things that we do as part of we have a network that is that essentially run by the University of Worcester, Association for Dementia Studies, and that's what we essentially provide. Right, back to you, Shirley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the future of meeting centres in the UK, and it's looking good from 2025 onwards. As we said, there's more than 70, maybe much more, and growing. And part of this is because Scotland has formed its own Meeting Centres Scotland network and charity, Meeting Centres Scotland, due to its high number of meeting centres and strong support for them, including from the Scottish Government. And meeting centres are as part of the Scottish Dementia strategy and action plan as well. So it's really exciting to see those developments there. And on the back of that, there, learning lessons, we've just set up a charity meeting centres for England, and we're just sort of formulating who's going to be on the board, and a strategy for that. We don't have a dementia strategy in England, so we won't have that sort of government and other support behind it. But hopefully, you know, it could work the other way, that meeting centres taking forward could drive that within the policy and such like. So a lot of developments going on there, and we're hoping that this will follow in Wales and Northern Ireland. We have a meeting centre, a UK meeting centre consortium that we lead from the university. So we're looking to drive that forward and looking for funding all the time to do that. There's been a sort of a diversification of innovative types of meeting centre, and as mentioned before, is the new development in our hospital, a meeting centre in a hospital, the Royal Victoria Dementia Meeting Centre and Training Hub, which is in Dundee, a dedicated space where people living with dementia and their families can receive support, engage in meaningful activities, and connect with others in a safe and understanding environment. It's a 2-year project. It started, and Meeting Centres Scotland have appointed a manager to take this forward, somebody that's already had significant experience in running meeting centres in East Lothian. So it's a 2-year project seeking to alleviate stress and distress that often accompany hospital stays for people living with dementia. And it really came about from the chair of Meeting Centres Scotland, who's an expert by experience and had spent some time in hospital, and it was based on his experiences of people that he came into contact with there, and it sort of led to this project. So yeah, that aims to improve the overall experience for patients, their families and hospital staff, and also contribute to the professional development of future healthcare practitioners. And Meeting Centres Scotland have the big social, well, that's Meeting Centres Scotland conference, which is taking place on the 19th and 20th of May. It looks very exciting. Lots celebrating meeting centres in Scotland. They will have a meeting centre running at the same time alongside this. And Professor Dres is going to be there, Professor Brooker, I'm going to be there. It has actually sold out, so it's very exciting. And that's our contact details, and thank you very much for listening to us. And stop sharing.
Thank you. And it would be great if you want to put some of the contact details also on the website. And of course, we will be sharing the slides if you want, and the video after this. And now I'm delighted to introduce Clementina Rook, who's going to present on the experience of taking the meeting centers to Zimbabwe. And I will be trying to share your slides, Clementina.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'm just going to wait for my slides to come through and say hello to the usual people that I work quite closely with, Shirley there, Thomas, and and everybody else. Really nice to see you. So thank you very much all for attending. So just by way of background, I am really a child of Worcester in many ways. You know, I went there to train for my FITS program to become a coach, to train dementia care coaches, and that's where I learned about meeting centers. So really everything else that I have, you know, comes from the likes of Shirley Thomas and Professor Droves there. So it was through this introduction that I fell in love with meeting centers and then thought, I know they're meant for the UK and then for the West, but I think it's something that should work. It should work for Africa. Why not to go and try it? So if you just go to the next slide, I'm going to just present briefly about the profile of Zimbabwe. First of all, with how it all began. It's through the desire to immortalize my mother, who had dementia in the last years of her life, you know, about 10 years of her life. And so therefore I'm thinking, here we are, she's suffering, we're applying all these skills and all these things that we've learned to her distance. And why not, you know, after she's died, why not, you know, go ahead and then just do that. So it's based in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe, and then pretty much, you know, to look at her and honor her. It was my way also of actually finding therapy, grieving my mom. So it seems to have worked quite well. So founded heavily, it was influenced by the need to improve her care herself, and also to follow on from that to improve the care of those living with dementia. It was registered initially as a trust, and then I moved on to register it as a PVO, private voluntary organization under the Zimbabwean Act. You know, a lot of hoops to jump through, as you would appreciate, but we managed to jump through those with pain sometimes. So the profile then, Zimbabwe is a low income country with a population of about 15.1 million, and people there, 55% of those people live in rural countryside. This is some statistics that I've got from ZimStats. It is a multi-ethnic society with diverse religious and traditional practices. I've got to say that and sit with it because it has implications. So these cultural and faith-based practices tend to guide how people in Zimbabwe then, you know, understand the problems that they get faced with. This is largely the case, you know, when we look at dementia and associated problems, where the issue of stigma relating to witchcraft and spiritual possession are very prevalent. So I just thought I should let it sit there so you know the challenges that I'm faced with as I try to introduce, you know, the concept. Next slide. So, but how do we know there's a problem of which meeting centers are actually a fitting solution? So from my mom's experience, you know, experiential knowing, I knew that this is something that would work, and let's try it. And then unfortunately now the meeting center is running way after she's gone, but I knew then, you know, from these principles, you know, what I'd learned about it. And also we know there's a problem, you know, from that extrapolated evidence, you know, the data. Who says in 2020, 768 deaths that occurred in that year were attributed to Alzheimer's? And then in the this represents 0.71%. And now I don't know how true this is. This is where research and actually, you know, going into it strongly will be good for me, because I don't know, it's all extrapolated. No one's gone out there to say who says that, but you know, can we challenge that by getting real data? So unfortunately, to this day, there's little information about the population of Zimbabwe itself as far as dementia is concerned. And I think there's a pressing need for a population study to actually look at prevalence, because it sort of feels like I've come from the back end to say, I know a problem exists, here's a solution, I'm just going to power on and do it. But what the extent of it is unknown to this day. And I think this is the same for Africa in general. This is what I'm beginning to establish. So it interests me a lot. So there appears to be no guidance at policy level on how social care for those living with dementia can be delivered. So this results in these uninformed and risk-ridden care approaches and reactions based on faith and cultural beliefs. So if I'm going to know that, you know, someone is a witch, I'm going to go to a witch doctor and then find ways of dealing with it, or go to church and pray for them until they turn blue. So these are the the huge challenges that we are really faced with there, and very interesting subject to actually crack into. So now I'm going to want to talk about, you know, the progress. Since introduction, I found we call it Arrowhell Meeting Center. That stands for my parents' names. My dad was called Aaron, he's late now. My mom was called Helmina. So we just combined that, and that's how we came up with the name. And it has continued to provide patient-centered care to comply with the meeting center agenda as articulated by Worcester there and Professor Droves, and you know, really very close to the philosophy, as it were. So we've continued to have regular meetings with an average of between 4 to 6 participants. I don't go on my register currently. I'm looking at 15 people that are coming regularly. And that's down to also the tensions that there are, because the space itself has to be enough to contain so many people, you know, about like insurances and things. So every Tuesday and every Thursday, without fail, unless if we're stopped by the government to operate, we come. They come for 2 hours per day. Wednesdays has been set aside to do our domiciliary visits. And that came from the volunteers themselves who thought, if they can't be here, let's just go for a Wednesday and see. And 1 hour spent there just chit chatting with them. And it's proved very popular, and it really does work. The center also is persistently provided various activities aimed at stimulating, you know, cognition and fostering socialization, and then promoting overall wealth and well-being. And this is provided by a very small team of dementia care coaches. Now, I'm taking pride from the work that I did at Worcester to become a professional dementia coach. So I've continued to train people in Zambia, in Zimbabwe. I trained a group of 10 caregivers, or just people from that had interest in dementia. So I trained them. Now they're dementia care coaches. 3 of those of 10 came and said, you know what, we want to offer our services. We're happy to work here. And I don't give them much as far as money is concerned, but they are there. You'll see little clips that I have there that will warm your heart. We have workshops, lectures on topics. I have delivered lectures, you know, from the way we are doing now back at them, you know, they're in the space listening to it all, education on dementia and general things on health and eating, mental health, you name it. So we see these things happening, and then subjects of lectures and programs sometimes, you know, can be delivered by other people from the who volunteer from health experts in Zimbabwe itself. So we try to open it up so that it's not only me and then taking it from here. So here, how has it been received so far? I just wanted to take a little, some snapshots from one of the dementia care coaches who says the center is a platform where they can come and be who they are. They really are. They can shout, they can sing, they can dance, and they can be silent without judgment or question. And it is who they are for the majority of them. They can be young again. That really warmed me up, and it was from somebody. And then you can see how it speaks to the philosophy of the meeting center there. I think Professor Droves will be really pleased with this outcome in, in Africa, where it wasn't meant for. One of the most innovative activities to date, this is the DCC again, it has seen each member been assigned a tree to go grow in nature. And then from that growing and nurturing of the plant, it says there, you know what, I can't see it, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it says it feels to them as if, you know, they're looking after a child again. So they want to make sure that tree grows, that tree doesn't die. And it's some of these activities that we just plant. And I think one of the pictures that I have, you will see. But let me talk about the challenges before I go in there. Initially, there were challenges that were threatening to derail this progress. And then they came back to me and said, well, look, you know, we really sometimes we find it difficult to deal. We're at a dead end. That's the words they used to find what to say. We feel challenged. You know, can we get some training, please? That's how I then went with the FITS program, focused interventions, training and support. Train them, and they feel adequate with that training. It's a powerful program that I'm blitzing Africa with it. I've just trained 2 cohorts in Zambia as we speak, and we are at the end of the one, and it even received money from Global Health Partnerships, you know, the THET. So they wanted a functional television so they could do videos and play music That's been done. I managed to get that and mounted it on the wall. They wanted a printer. They've got a printer now, so user friendly, you name it, for the elderly. A solar system. They said, since Zimbabwe's problem with the electricity, how can we? Because it goes for 2-3 days without electricity. So in place, also I've managed to put in a solar system, which is so powerful. It's been functioning for the last 2 years now, with a very strong battery. So they are never out of electricity to actually power the TV that they need to use, or their phones. They wanted a refrigerator. There had been a refrigerator to keep water warm. That's there. All that has been all covered, from this request came about a year or 2 years ago. So all that is in place. So it means, we are functioning without any kind of, problems. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to play here. So on my right hand side, they're doing activities, and you will see the lady in a hat. Let's stay with that one there. I'll tell you what she then does.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Izandla zi-straight. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So if I can just describe, then talk it through. They're doing activities. They're just stretching exercises, and the guy in a green T-shirt is leading, clapping and all. The lady you see in a black dress, she's advanced in a dementia thing. She can't almost remember anything at all, and yet she remembers that she's got a center to go to, and then she'll come and attend all this and get involved. She's selectively mute. She will say, I can't speak, I can't, but when you encourage her, the words starts coming out. So this is what the meeting center has done for her. That stimulation, very powerful stuff. And now the lady into the left-hand side, if you just play that one there,
Hey!
You'll see when you do play, because she couldn't stand and be with the others and do the activities. She felt that she should then stand and do a little dance, and you can see her kick the leg through. Then she laughs and says, I used to dance when I was young, and she sits down and she laughs. And because she couldn't do all those activities like the others, to lift legs and to do all sorts, so it's like, oh, let's go in and do that. So very exciting stuff, really. So that's more activities there. If you see, sort of stretches and all this, and very comfortable. He's not putting them under any amount of pressure at all.
Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Right. There's somebody. Izandla, 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 izandla. Unyawo, 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 unyawo. Ikhanda, ikhanda, ikhanda. Yavuma ikhanda. Hayi asabheki.
And they seem very happy and very involved as they do all those. No pressure. So, and I'm very grateful for these 3 of them that continue to just come very religiously there. I'll tell you what, I give them $15 a month for the 2 hours that they spend there, for the 2 days a week. They don't complain, they don't grumble. Very little money, but there you are. So on the left hand side, we have them working in a garden. They are preparing space for them to plant their trees. And so it's that way inclined, very involved again. So one minute is physical exercise of that nature, and they've asked, because the guy that's sitting there is a blind man. You will see him later on. He's also involved and very interested in what's going on. Although he can't see anything, he feels it. I met him when I went in January, just then. I'm going to talk about now, following on to these further infrastructure developments. bought a Starlink, Elon Musk. I nearly didn't, towards the elections, but anyway, it's there. It is providing unlimited access. So we find that we've got real-time collaboration with stakeholders. I'm going to reach out and speak to policymakers. One day, hopefully, I can invite you to be in the same space with me while we engage with people there. That's amazing. It's just changed things so quickly. The council had they said, what are you going to do, with registrations, the way they work, you've got to jump all these hoops and tick all these boxes. And so they said, what are you going to do about the issue of water since you've got the elderly coming to your place? So I was then forced to purchase and install a 5,000-liter water tank to mitigate the serious problem of water shortages. They're standing there. I think you've seen that, Prof, in one of the pictures I sent to you. It's all in situ. It gets the water coming into the house. And because one of those ladies I was showing you will have problems with passing urine, so she's constantly going to the toilet. So you can see how it's very important for us to maintain that. The other thing that when I was there was the resurfacing of the internal and external areas there so that they don't slip. So I've managed to put on non-slip tiles, and also outside put slabs, because I went in January and I had spent over about £2,000 to do the outside, because when I saw them walk when I was with them, it trip hazards. And I'm thinking, no, not on my call, because I'm serious about this whole thing. It should succeed. And I get stubborn like that. I remember saying that to you, Adelina. I really had to be stubborn with this issue. So all that, for risk of falls. One of the corridors was really dark, so we had to paint it white and maybe put tiles or something so light can be absorbed back in, and then things. So we also have modest landscaping that is going to be operationalized throughout this year. We've got plans underway to actually erect an African corner. It'll be there in the picture that I'll show you there. So because they've asked if we could have these things that we use in the village, grinding stones, mortar and pestle, if they can be there and we see what's happening, it would bring meaning to us. Again, working with community and what they want. This is it. They are saying and we are doing. So that's going to happen in the next year. And then if it's by hook, it will be not by hook, it will be by crook. That's my attitude to it. It should happen for them because it's meaningful to them. And these are things. If you see these two pictures, that was me and them just in January. And you can see the surfaces there the way they are. There's a little strip there on the right-hand side. One nearly fell, following that strip into the house from the gate. And I thought, nah, it's not going to happen. No one's going to fall here. So came back and put money and I put money together, and you see the before and after there next to it. So we had to buy some interlocking pavers that got finished within a week. We had resurfaced the whole that place, and I had stopped them coming at the time just to say, let me make this safe for you. And they kept coming to Pip, through the gate, like, when is it going to be ready? So we come back. So they've so now when it's, as soon as it got finished, they're back again doing their activities. So the clips, that wouldn't play, those were clips of now after it's all been resurfaced and not nice for them. So very, very exciting. Next slide. you know I'll really burn you with enthusiasm. That's what I'm like, when I like something. So what are the challenges in need of constant monitoring and reviewing? Finances. Thomas talked about finances and funding is always going to be the case. If you can only do so much operating on a shoestring budget. But I think from just looking back, we've made amazing developments just to make sure, and I'll take your words there, Prof, to say you're really building it from the ground up. This is how I got my title for my presentation from what you said. So it's been self-funded mostly. More is yet to be done. I think, the remuneration of volunteers themselves, is I could even give them more for the work that they do, but they seem content with only $15 which is about £12 or something. Training, I've put on hold the training of dementia care coaches. People still want to be trained in dementia. Maybe one day start something amazing, do some research, increase capacity, let them come more maybe run 2 centers, run a morning session for some and then an afternoon session for some, because they want to come, and I'm stopping them because I need to contain the numbers as per what the capacity of the house can carry. And then governance. So managing a project remotely, it takes some doing. I just have to have the energy for it to keep going. And then sometimes you hear, oh, this has happened, someone has misappropriated that money meant for volunteers, and what are you gonna do? So now what I've done is create a WhatsApp forum where I'm asking for real time for the volunteers to upload. I get, today we went and did A, B, C, D. Yes, I've received that $15 that you sent to me. Thank you very much. Transparency and accountability in real time. It's happening. I get uploads of, all the clips that I've just played for you came in yesterday. It was a meeting on the 25th. And then the biggest thing for us is compliance. So continually being externally monitored to make sure, safeguarding. I talked about the issue of water. Are they okay? Are they happy? But also the other thing is, politics, are you gathered there? Are you buying these people, so that you get, it becomes messy at that level, but I'm just keeping it really simple, because what I'm interested in is for these elderly people to get to enjoy themselves the way they are. But compliance is what it is, so we've got to go along with it, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. So that will be them there. So if you take me to the very last slide, I'm saying there, we are not going back. They are really keen. I am so keen. There's so much to do, and we're only moving forward with strength. And this is how I see. I've had someone approach me. I think it was your thing, Shirley, your slide showing that South Africa has a meeting center, because I've been talking to Zetu, who says, how did you do your meeting center? This is what I did. So now she's moving to actually create a meeting center in South Africa on the same kind of thing. Yes. And I was in Zambia now, doing teaching, training, capacity building. There's a place there. I think she approached you at Worcester, this lady who's running a daycare that has the hallmarks of a meeting center. And I really would like that thing to happen and quick, for it to be registered, because there will be another meeting center in Zambia, which is doing exactly, what it is. So before you know it, you'll be claiming Southern Africa easy, for this kind of thing. We'll be also wanting to go in and claim, Africa is at where? Because this is powerful stuff. And this is the energy that I really do have for it, and it will change lives for people in Africa where money is little, and yet you don't have to have tons and tons of money to enjoy yourself, as indicated there. So yeah, look for funding of whichever nature. That would be amazing. And thank you to you, Dr. Prof, because it's opportunities like this, what you find, and point me in that direction to have conversation with people, to have conversation to say, can we do research, for example, yourself, Adelina, if I can get funding and whatever, and do a prevalence study and then go on and do interventions, can we then measure the appropriateness of the meeting center as an intervention for the entire Africa? I think the answer is almost there, but with these things, you need the facts to prove. And then once I do, give me that anytime, I think I'll be ruling Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now that was very, very inspiring, and thank you all the speakers for this amazing journey we've had from an idea that started in the 90s, how it's been spreading around the world. We've heard a bit also about more in detail about the UK implementation and expansion, and all the research that's continuing to support the meeting centers as an excellent intervention, and then now seeing how to build something, as you say, Clementina, from the very beginning, from the bottom up, and everything that's coming to it. So now we have a bit of time for questions and for discussion. You can unmute yourselves and speak. It's not too many of us. I think we can handle the discussion quite informally. But if you say who you are or where you are in the world, that would be great. Anyone would like to get started? Marco, yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Marco Stampini. I work in the Inter-American Development Bank. And within the social protection area, we are advocating for long-term care programs and also programs for people with dementia, or actually also in the area of health. And we are now working with a few states in Brazil to do programs that are very much aligned to what you presented today. So one general question that I have is if you know experts that could help us implement this in Brazil, Portuguese speaking that are in Brazil and could help us with this. And then more technically, can you give me an idea of the amount of human resources, like what is the ratio of workers to users of the centers, and maybe also what type of professional profile you recommend they have? Thank you.
Not sure who from the speakers would like to take the question, but I can just see that the expansion, we're getting to other continents even. Maybe Rosemary?
We have, of course, the manual in Spanish, how to set up meeting centers, but it should be then maybe translated in Portuguese or yeah. The person who translated it in Spanish is Manuel Franco, and we have within Interdem, we have several connections with another Manuel living in Lisbon. Yeah, so I would say the first thing to do.
You can send us even after the meeting. Portuguese speaking could be in Portugal. If it is in Brazil, even better, because they could also work together in the implementation. That would be very welcome.
I'm happy to do an introduction after. Yeah.
We also have, of course, the English online course in English and in Spanish. But yeah, Portuguese is a different language. Yeah, we have connections also within Internet. Deborah Oliveira, she was part of the Induct network. She's from Brazil, I think, but she now lives in Peru. Maybe she has connections in Brazil.
Yeah, and Marco, you know Deborah. I think she worked at the Inter-American Bank for a while, so I think that may be a very helpful connection.
She worked with us.
Maybe she has useful connections for this. But I can send you some information if you put your email address in the chat.
Thank you. It's amazing to see even more how this is even spreading in real time in our webinars to other parts of the world, and that's fantastic. Just wondering if there are any other questions.
Yeah, there was a question from Marco about the ratio of staff to members of the meeting centre. Yeah, first of all, and then there was also one about the qualifications. So this will vary from, I think, from country to country and a bit from meeting centre to meeting centre. But Rosemary, if you forgive me, but in the meeting centre guide, then they will have for a meeting centre with around 16 people attending a day to 20. There'll be a staff of a coordinator or manager, as we might call it, and then 2 support workers, plus some volunteers. So some meeting centres might be smaller than that, and then that might vary. I mean, in Herefordshire, where I am, we've got one, so from 4 days a week, and with around about 12 to 15 people attending. So there'll be a manager and 2 support workers, volunteers. The one in Hereford at the moment has 12 people attending, but mostly with the carers going as well. So there's often 2 people there, 2 staff and then volunteers. And then Ross, which insists on people with living with dementia go with a carer as well. And there's now a paid coordinator and volunteers. It was run entirely by volunteers at one point. That's open 1 day a week. and then qualifications. Well, I mean, clearly what is needed different for the manager and the support workers. So here in the UK, generally that it would be somebody who would be educated to National Vocational Qualification Level 3, and obviously an extensive experience of working with people with dementia. That might not always be the case, but often somebody who is running a meeting centre will have that health and social care background, and quite often they come from at the NHS and have perhaps a nursing background.
Yeah, just to add to what you're saying there and say, I like the way you came with it depends. Because for me, you know, Marco, from people in Zimbabwe that are currently working with people with, problems, O levels, A levels, this is before you even go to university. An interest, are you looking after someone with dementia as a caregiver? And then they identify that we need training, so I provide that training. So far for me, it's enough to be a dementia care coach after receiving the training that I give. Therefore they can then manage, and the coordinator is the same way. He's got A level certificates before going to uni. So it'd be the passion for what you're doing, the kind of desire to learn and then deliver that. What I'm seeing now is amazing, honestly. I've got to say, they are into it in a big way. And then one of them does not even have A levels or O levels at all, but she's there like clockwork. And then being there, it's the engagement rather than the qualification that there is.
Other questions or comments?
I can go ahead forever. I mean, another question is, in Brazil, they are thinking of putting it into some big complexes that are building for older people, where there are lots of recreational activities, but several different spaces. So is it okay to put it in a structure that has broader goals for the older population, or should it be a place that has a separate entrance that is separated from other activities?
Well, we think it's very good when it's socially integrated and not in let's say in a care organization. But the social integration can be with seniors, but it can be also with different ages. I think the thing is that we create all kind of isolated things for older people. We have done that the last 40 years, and then you have to create a lot of integration again artificially. But if you just integrate it in a normal environment, you don't have to create all kind of difficult things. You just have this integration there. So when you're in a community building or whatever, there are children, there are organized all kinds of activities like music or yoga or whatever. You can try to integrate. And so I think that's always better, that people don't feel stigmatized when they are kind of isolated in a care environment, but just in a normal environment. But yeah, if there's created something for older people in the neighborhood, of course you can also integrate people with dementia. So then it's more dementia-friendly neighborhoods, where activities for older people are also accessible for people with dementia.
Thank you.
Thomas?
Yes, I was just going to add that we do have some examples in the UK of places where where there is a centre that has multiple things going on. It's not necessarily all for older people, but a community centre where the meeting centre might be based, but then there are also other groups that use the rooms and so on, and that can be really good because obviously then you can actually kind of make links with those other groups and other services and so on, and have a kind of community hub. But again, it's that trying to get away from, obviously, when you had things in care homes, then obviously there's the stigma, so it is getting away from the stigma, but then still having this kind of like support network of multiple kind of third sector groups, charity groups or initiatives that are all kind of working out to the same base. That can work really well, because then you can actually have the meeting centre can federate with the other kind of groups that are using the building. and signpost to each other, direct to each other, and support each other. But that could be, yeah, obviously it's a balance, isn't it, I guess.
Mm.
Do you have other questions or comments or reflections?
I was just going to add quickly there, Adeline, to say, this integration and with the others, there's a pilot that Laura is on this call, a PhD student who's studying with me. We did a pilot where we actually allowed our students to go and do their placement and learn from meeting centers as a hub, and we were actually producing a report now, and we're going to write a paper on it, and we present it to a conference just to say there's power in there as well. So while we're talking about integration with other things, building sites and stuff, well, we don't teach that's enough in our curriculum. So this could be a place where they can go and learn a lot and then achieve their proficiencies.
So I think we're coming to the end of the webinar. I don't know, Walt, if you have any final comment, reflection from the steering group.
I would just say thank you everyone for your fantastic presentations. I think this is just a great example of the type of webinars that our interest group wants to hold, and look forward to hosting more. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And just to say, if the speakers would like to, we will share the slides. We will create basically a page where there will be the video, the slides, and any links that you'd like us to include as well. And this will take just maybe a couple of weeks for it to be on the website. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating, and thank you for this amazing journey, really across the world, and of seeing how a project has developed, matured, and how it's really making such a big difference. And it's so well evidence-based as well. So everything's coming together beautifully. So thank you very much. Wishing you all a good weekend and a good evening or a good morning. And we'll see you soon for our next webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.